The Galactic Alliance was an expansive confederation of countless species united by mutual interest, survival, trade, and the pursuit of knowledge. For centuries, the Alliance had thrived, bolstered by the technological ingenuity of its members and the collective wisdom of countless civilizations. However, everything changed when humanity joined their ranks. Humans, a relatively young species in the cosmic timeline, had long fascinated the Alliance with their technological advancements and tenacity. Despite their turbulent history and late arrival to interstellar diplomacy, humanity had accomplished the impossible. They had caught up with, and in some areas surpassed, the technological might of the Alliance's oldest races. The Council of Vanguard Species, comprised of the most respected and powerful races, was particularly intrigued by Earth's peculiarities. Humans had no naturally superior physiology, no extraordinary senses, and no inherent resistance to cosmic threats like radiation or disease. And yet, their combat records spoke volumes. Every simulation, skirmish, or joint operation with human forces left other races baffled by their skill and endurance. To learn more, the Valtheri, a reptilian species known for their bravery and military prowess, volunteered to send their trainees and soldiers to observe and participate in a human military training camp. This was more than curiosity, it was a challenge. The Valtheri believed themselves to be the ultimate warriors, and they relished the opportunity to prove it. They had no idea what awaited them. Camp Genesis was situated on a barren, windswept plateau on a terraformed moon orbiting Proxima Centauri. The landscape was unforgiving, with jagged cliffs, scorching days, and freezing nights. The humans had chosen this location not because it was habitable, but because it wasn't. The Valtheri delegation consisted of 15 individuals, 10 trainees, 3 seasoned soldiers, and 2 officers tasked with observing and reporting back to their homeworld. Their transport shuttle landed under a pale orange sky, its hull still glowing from the atmospheric entry. Waiting for them were the humans. The commanding officer, Colonel Adrian Drake, was a stern, broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes and a weathered face that betrayed decades of experience. Beside him stood his cadre of instructors, battle-hardened veterans with expressions as unyielding as the stone cliffs around them. Among them were First Sergeant Jacob Thorne, Staff Sergeant Elias Voss, and Gunnery Sergeant Ethan Hart. These men weren't just soldiers, they were legends within the Terran military. Colonel Drake greeted the Valtheri delegation with a firm, measured tone. "Welcome to Camp Genesis. Here, we break recruits down to nothing and rebuild them into soldiers. Soldiers who can fight, think, and endure in the worst conditions the galaxy can throw at them." His gaze hardened. "You're here to observe, but I hear some of you are volunteering to train. Fair warning, this isn't a competition. This is survival." The Valtheri officer, Commander Kithril, stepped forward, his crest of emerald scales shimmering in the sunlight. "We do not fear hardship. We came to learn and test ourselves. We will rise to meet your standards." Drake's lip twitched into the barest hint of a smirk. "We'll see." The Valtheri trainees were assigned to a platoon alongside human recruits. They quickly learned that human training was not a series of drills but a crucible designed to push every individual beyond their limits. The instructors' methods were relentless, a blend of calculated psychological torment and physical exhaustion. The first week began with the basics, running, climbing, and lifting. But even these basics were nightmarish. Recruits were woken at 0300 for grueling runs through the jagged terrain. They carried packs filled with sandbags weighing up to 70 kilograms, with increasing weight each day. These runs weren't just about distance, they involved sprints uphill, navigating crumbling rock paths, and enduring blistering heat. Valtheri physiology, built for short bursts of speed, faltered quickly. By the third day, 3 Valtheri trainees were carried off by medical drones, their claws bleeding and limbs trembling uncontrollably. Recruits crawled under barbed wire while live rounds cracked overhead, scaled walls slick with oil, and hauled themselves across chasms using frayed ropes. Any mistake meant starting over. When one Valtheri recruit hesitated before a climb, Gunnery Sergeant Hart snarled, "The enemy won't wait for you to grow a spine. Move!" After completing the day's exercises, recruits embarked on 20-kilometer marches in full combat gear, including ballistic armor, weapons, and water reserves. The human recruits, though exhausted, pressed on with grim determination. The Valtheri lagged, their heavier frames not designed for prolonged load-bearing. By the end of the week, only 6 Valtheri trainees remained. As the recruits entered their second week, the focus shifted to breaking their minds. The recruits were subjected to firewatch schedules, forcing them to operate on just 2 hours of sleep per cycle. Alarms blared randomly at night, and recruits were roused to respond to simulated ambushes. The Valtheri, who required longer rest cycles to recover fully, struggled to adapt. By midweek, one trainee lashed out in frustration, snapping at Staff Sergeant Voss, who promptly assigned him 3 hours of corrective exercise. Recruits were confined in dark chambers filled with disorienting strobe lights and ear-piercing static. They had to disarm a simulated explosive device while enduring the chaos. One Valtheri recruit failed repeatedly, his claws fumbling the wires. "I can't think in this madness," he growled. "Then you're already dead," Voss replied coldly. Recruits faced war simulations requiring creative teamwork. In one exercise, they were trapped in a simulated minefield with a disabled vehicle. The human recruits excelled, creating an impromptu bridge using nearby debris, while the Valtheri hesitated, unused to such improvisation. The final phase involved realistic war games. Recruits operated in teams, defending positions against waves of drones and human instructors armed with non-lethal weapons. The Valtheri quickly learned that human combat training was as much about thinking under pressure as physical action. The instructors exploited every mistake ruthlessly, ambushing recruits who forgot to cover their flanks or left gaps in their defenses. In one memorable encounter, a Valtheri trainee attempted to charge a human instructor, only to be caught in a net trap. The humans responded with a coordinated counterattack, neutralizing the rest of his team. After 3 weeks, the remaining Valtheri soldiers, those who hadn't dropped out, were offered the chance to attempt Hell's Crucible, a segment of the elite training program. The humans warned them, this was not meant to be completed, only endured. The trial began with a 100-kilometer trek through a volcanic wasteland. Recruits carried only a canteen and a knife, relying on their wits to survive. Ash storms and rivers of molten rock were constant hazards. One by one, the Valtheri succumbed to the environment, their bodies unable to endure the relentless heat and toxic air. By the end of the week, only Commander Kithril remained. On the final day, Kithril faced a grueling task, infiltrating an enemy outpost to retrieve a hostage. The outpost was defended by veteran instructors who gave no quarter. Kithril's strength and speed allowed him to eliminate several guards, but he was eventually pinned down. Using a trick he had learned from the humans, he created a diversion by setting fire to a fuel depot, allowing him to extract the hostage. Colonel Drake watched from the command tower. "He's got potential," he muttered. The Valtheri were given a front-row seat to humanity's most defining trait, their ability to fight in real combat. The opportunity arose when a human platoon was deployed to a colony under attack by heavily armed pirates. Positioned in a fortified vantage point, the Valtheri observed the mission unfold, their breath catching in their throats as chaos erupted below. The human soldiers moved with an uncanny precision that left the Valtheri both awed and unsettled. Their teamwork was seamless, almost instinctive, as if each soldier could anticipate the actions of their comrades before they even happened. Squads covered each other with unwavering discipline, their weapons sweeping through fields of fire with a grace that bordered on choreography. When a building collapsed, blocking a critical route, the humans adapted immediately, rerouting their advance without hesitation. The Valtheri, accustomed to more rigid formations, marveled at the humans' ability to function like a single, cohesive organism, even in the chaos of battle. As the firefight intensified, the Valtheri witnessed another trait that set the humans apart, their endurance. One soldier took a direct hit from a plasma bolt to his shoulder, his armor hissing as it absorbed much of the energy but still left a searing wound. Despite the injury, the soldier barely flinched. He continued to lay down suppressive fire with his uninjured arm while a combat medic worked swiftly to patch him up under fire. A Valtheri observer murmured in disbelief, their pain tolerance is unnatural. Yet, the humans showed no sign of slowing, pressing their advance with the same relentless determination. Then came a moment that left even Commander Kithrell stunned into silence. A grenade arced into a group of civilians who had been cornered in the crossfire. Without hesitation, a human corporal lunged forward, throwing himself over the explosive to shield the civilians with his own body. The grenade detonated, shredding the corporal's armor and leaving his lifeless form crumpled on the ground. The civilians were unharmed, staring in shock at the man who had sacrificed himself without hesitation. Watching from the vantage point, Kithrell whispered, "They prioritize others over themselves. Even in death." The Valtheri were warriors, trained to value their survival for the sake of future battles. This selflessness was alien to them. Throughout the battle, the human combat medics displayed a level of bravery that the Valtheri found difficult to comprehend. While most species prioritized medical care after combat had ended, the humans treated their wounded in the thick of the fight. Medics darted through the chaos, dragging the injured to cover, stabilizing them, and returning to the fray without hesitation. One Valtheri observer was struck by stray shrapnel and fell, his breathing ragged. Before he could even process what was happening, a human medic was at his side, applying a sealant to the wound and administering a pain suppressant. The medic's voice was calm and firm. "You're not dying here. Stay with me." He then hoisted the Valtheri over his shoulder and carried him to safety, all while plasma rounds zipped past them. The battle reached its climax when the pirates deployed a heavily shielded combat mech, a towering machine bristling with weapons and armor that seemed impervious to small arms fire. For a brief moment, the Valtheri thought the humans would falter, but they did not. A sergeant quickly barked orders, splitting the platoon into two teams. One team moved to act as a decoy, drawing the mecha's fire with hit-and-run tactics, while the other team maneuvered into position to plant demolition charges on its legs. The plan was executed with surgical precision. The decoy team moved in perfect sync, their suppressive fire creating just enough distraction for the demolition team to approach undetected. Within moments, the charges were detonated, the mecha's shields failed, and a concentrated volley of high-explosive rounds brought it crashing down. By the end of the mission, dozens of civilians had been evacuated, and the pirate force was routed. However, the cost was heavy. 6 human soldiers lay dead, their bodies carefully recovered and carried by their comrades with solemn reverence. The Valtheri watched in silence, humbled by the scene before them. For all their bravery and prowess, the humans were not invincible. Yet, their ability to endure loss, adapt to overwhelming odds, and place the lives of others above their own left the Valtheri shaken. As the human platoon regrouped and prepared to depart, Commander Kithrell turned to his fellow observers. "We thought ourselves warriors," he said, his voice low and contemplative. "But we do not know what it means to fight like this." As the Valtheri delegation returned to their homeworld, they carried with them a profound respect and fear of humanity. The brutal training methods they had once dismissed as excessive now seemed chillingly justified. The resilience and discipline they had witnessed were not mere displays of strength, they were the foundation of humanity's ability to endure unimaginable trials. Commander Kithrell, the sole Valtheri to survive even a portion of humanity's elite training, addressed his people in a somber assembly. "Humans do not fight because they are stronger or faster," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of his experience. "They fight because they endure. They sacrifice. They shape themselves into tools of survival, honed to perfection by suffering. If we do not learn from them, if we do not emulate their resolve, we will remain in their shadow, forever unprepared for the true cost of war." The words resonated deeply with his audience, but even Kithrell's speech could not fully capture the emotional toll the Valtheri had seen in humanity's actions. During the journey home, the delegation couldn't shake the memory of the battle's aftermath. Stern, battle-hardened human soldiers, those who had fought with unyielding resolve, had openly wept for their fallen comrades. One young soldier, his face smeared with blood and dirt, had knelt beside a lifeless body and whispered, "You deserve to make it home," his tears carving streaks through the grime on his face. The Valtheri had watched in stunned silence as the surviving platoon gathered around their fallen brothers in arms. Each name was spoken aloud, their deeds recounted in brief but heartfelt tributes. A sergeant, his voice steady but thick with emotion, had saluted the dead and vowed, "You will not be forgotten. Your sacrifice will carry us forward." Upon their return to Earth, the respect afforded to soldiers by the human populace became even more apparent. At a memorial service held for the fallen, civilians of all ages came to pay their respects. Some brought flowers, others left handwritten notes or simple mementos. The ceremony was not a show of pageantry but a sincere outpouring of gratitude and grief. Children looked up at the soldiers with wide-eyed admiration, while elders spoke in hushed tones of the sacrifices these men and women had made to protect them. One Valtheri observer, standing at the edge of the crowd, remarked, "In our society, warriors are celebrated for their victories. Here, they are honored for their sacrifices. It is humbling." The galaxy's perspective on humanity began to shift. What had once been seen as cruelty in their training was now recognized as preparation for the horrors of war. What had been dismissed as reckless abandon was revealed to be a deep, selfless commitment to protect others, even at great personal cost. Humans weren't just warriors, they were protectors, bound by a code that valued the lives of others above their own. In the hands of these unyielding protectors, the galaxy's future felt both secure and deeply unsettling. Humanity had shown they were willing to bear the unbearable, to endure pain and loss for the sake of others. And for all their strength and selflessness, there was an unspoken question that lingered in the minds of the Valtheri delegation: what will happen if this unbreakable force is ever turned against us?